They taught you to be a man, not to be yourself.
Imagine this. You're 6 years old. You fall, you cry, and a voice says, "Don't cry, be a man." You try to speak your mind, and they say, "Don't talk back, be respectful." You're afraid, and someone laughs. Man up. And so, you begin the great betrayal, not of others, of yourself. The first lie you learn to tell is silence. Not because you want to, but because they taught you that being good means being less real. So you obey, and with each passing year, the real you slips deeper underground. Buried beneath honor codes, locker room talk, quiet desperation, and the illusion of stoic strength. You become strong, but hollow. Disciplined, but disconnected. Respected, but never truly known. You are not free. You are just socially acceptable. And they call that manhood. But Carl Jung warned us. The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. In other words, you're not living. You're performing. You've become a well-dressed prisoner. A well-liked stranger. A man who has never met himself. And worst of all, you don't even know it. Because society doesn't reward authenticity, it rewards obedience. It rewards performance. It hands out trophies to the best mask. And you were trained to wear yours better than anyone. But something inside you aches. Something feral. Something silent. And no matter how hard you try to outwork it, out-discipline it, or out-achieve it, it waits, watching, starving. The real you has been buried. But he is not dead. And one day, he will come for what is his. Not to punish you, but to free you. And if you ignore him, he will destroy you. Because what you repress returns. Wilder, darker, and far more powerful than you could ever control. Jung didn't see this as weakness. He saw it as law. That which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. And so here you are, living a life chosen for you by ghosts. Following scripts you never wrote. It's the rejection of reactive energy. It's the refusal to be manipulated. It's the power of the man who does not flinch, does not chase, does not beg, because he knows who he is. Most men can't hold silence. They flinch under pressure. They explain, justify, plead, defend. But the sovereign man, he lets the silence do the killing. He doesn't correct rumors. He doesn't chase closure. He doesn't dance for clarity. He's become untouchable, not because he has no wounds, but because those wounds are now his. Integrated, owned, weaponized. He no longer fears being misunderstood, because he no longer needs to be understood. This is the spiritual apex of individuation, where the man no longer seeks applause, where he no longer bends to comfort, where he no longer tailors his truth to make others feel safe. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Carl Jung, that's the throne. And it doesn't come with confetti. It comes with exile. It comes with nights of silence so loud it screams. It comes with people who once loved your performance, now hating your presence. Because presence, real presence, is unforgiving. It holds a mirror. It forces people to confront themselves. And not everyone's ready. So they'll try to pull you back into old roles, old dynamics, old wounds. And you do nothing. You don't react. You don't explain. You don't save them. Because the sovereign man doesn't sacrifice his truth to babysit someone else's ego. That's the weapon. Not rage, not charm, not brilliance, but sovereignty, silence, stillness. A man who can stand in his truth, completely misunderstood, and still not move. You want to be powerful? Hold the silence. You want to be free? Stop needing to be seen. You want to be unshakable? Own your truth in stillness. Let them talk. Let them guess. Because scripts are lifeless. And you were never meant to live someone else's idea of who you should be. But most men do. Most men never question the roles they've inherited. They chase success, not sovereignty. They seek validation, not vision. They follow the rules and lose themselves in the process. And the worst part? They confuse performance with purpose. Because the applause feels like meaning. Until it doesn't. Until you hit 30, or 40, or 50, and everything you built, the business, the body, the brand, feels like scaffolding around an empty cathedral. That's when it hits you. You were seen by the world, but you were never known, not even by yourself. And if that doesn't make your bones ache, you're not listening. The pain you feel isn't weakness. It's the return of the self, the real you, the buried you, the untamed, unpolished, unmarketable version. The one who doesn't fit inside the mold of high-value male, or provider, or protector, or good son, or top G. The one who doesn't need a script, because he writes his own. But here's the catch. To become him, you must kill the role you've been playing. And that's terrifying, because it means death. Death of identity, death of approval, death of the safety you built from performance. But Jung was clear, individuation requires this death. You cannot become whole without killing the mask. You cannot become you until the persona dies. So the question isn't, are you a man? The question is, whose idea of manhood are you living? And are you willing to bury it? You feel empty because you've amputated half of who you are, not by accident, but by design. From the moment you learned what was good, you began exiling everything that wasn't. The anger you weren't allowed to express, the fear you were mocked for feeling, the lust you were shamed for having, the rebellion you were punished for showing. Gone, pushed down, buried alive. But they didn't disappear. They went underground, into the shadow. Carl Jung called it the dark side of the psyche. Not because it's evil, but because it's unseen. It holds everything you were told was unacceptable to be. And you wonder why you feel hollow? Because you are trying to be whole, while rejecting half your nature. You are trying to become strong, while starving your rage. You are trying to become sovereign, while silencing your wildness. You are trying to become authentic, while curating your image for likes, love, and validation. You can't outgrow a wound you refuse to touch. You can't become a man while still performing as a boy. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, the shadow doesn't just stay hidden. It acts without your permission. The words you regret, the urges you suppress, the self-sabotage you can't explain. That's not random. That's repressed power breaking through the cracks. You think you're broken, but you're just disintegrated, split from your own essence. The addiction, the apathy, the anxiety, they're not diseases. They're signals. They're messages from the shadow. You abandoned me. And it's true. You were trained to abandon yourself, so you could be accepted by others. And now, you're loved by everyone, except you. That's the cost of pretending. That's the toll of wearing a mask for too long. Eventually, you forget there's a face underneath. You keep trying to fill the void with money, women, attention, aesthetics. But the shadow cannot be sedated. It must be met. And when you do, you find that it's not just pain hiding in there. It's power, your untapped will, your raw masculine force, your creative fire, your spiritual depth. The world told you to fear it, but it's the source of everything you're missing. You've been asking, why do I feel so empty? Because your shadow is starving. And here's the worst part. You've been feeding everyone else with pieces of yourself, serving a world that only loves you when you're compliant, keeping the peace, keeping the image, keeping the noise inside. But peace is a lie. If it costs you your soul, you were not made to be agreeable. You were made to be whole. That means welcoming the beast, the chaos, the part of you that wants to burn the false world down, not to destroy for the sake of destruction, but to clear space for truth, to reclaim your real voice, not the filtered one, to reclaim your real hunger, not the guilt, neutered version, to reclaim your real life, not the one scripted by trauma, trends, or tradition. But you cannot do that until you face the mirror, until you see what you've exiled, until you admit, I've been betraying myself to survive. That's when the work begins. Not the surface-level self-help, not the dopamine-chasing productivity, not the affirmations and goal-setting. I'm talking about psychological war, a descent into the underworld of your own psyche, where you stop asking, what do people want from me? And start demanding, what do I want from myself? This is the birth of individuation, not becoming someone new, but reclaiming who you were before you were told who to be. It's not pretty, it's not comfortable, but it is real, and it is yours. You don't actually want to be liked. You want to be free, but you've confused the two. And now you're imprisoned by the very mask you created to belong. This is the central lie of the modern man, that approval equals safety, that being palatable is the same as being powerful, that if you shape yourself just right, polite enough, polished enough, pleasing enough, you'll finally earn peace. But what you've earned is performance, not peace. You know it's true. You're exhausted, not from effort, but from suppression, from constantly scanning every room for danger, from editing yourself mid-sentence, from biting your tongue just to maintain a fragile illusion of peace. Carl Jung didn't preach peace. He preached wholeness. He said the real journey isn't to become good. It's to become real. That means embracing contradiction, owning your anger, acknowledging your lust, claiming your ambition, honoring your grief. That means becoming a man who cannot be manipulated, because he no longer needs your permission to exist. This is the shift, from performance to presence, from being liked to being known. But here's the brutal truth. You will be punished for this, because your presence will disrupt the performance of others. Your silence will expose their noise. Your boundaries will expose their invasiveness. Your truth will expose their lies. They will call you arrogant, cold, unempathetic. They will call you toxic, distant, unstable. Not because you are, but because you've stopped being digestible. You've stopped being a mirror for their fantasy and started becoming a threat to their delusion. This is the price of becoming real. And that's why most men stay in the cage. They feel the truth rising in them, but they shove it back down because they fear being alone more than they fear being fake. But what kind of life is that? A life of applause from people who don't know you? A life of comfort built on self-erasure? A life where your tombstone reads, "He was well-liked, but never lived." You think hiding your truth is keeping you safe, but it's actually keeping you enslaved. It's sedating your wildness, diluting your masculinity, domesticating your soul. You were not made for harmony. You were made for authenticity. And authenticity is confrontational. It confronts your father's silence. It confronts your mother's guilt. It confronts your lover's fear. It confronts the world's addiction to illusion. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. But that privilege requires sacrifice. You must sacrifice the need to be understood. You must sacrifice the need to be liked. You must sacrifice the performance. You must look in the mirror and say, "I would rather be real and alone than liked and lost." That's the moment everything changes. That's when the men who were pretending start falling away. That's when the women who wanted a puppet start pulling back. That's when society starts to call you dangerous, because they can no longer control you. But that's also when you start to feel alive, because you are finally operating in truth. And truth is not always safe, but it is always sacred. So stop chasing validation. Stop trying to be liked. Stop waiting for permission to be who the hell you already are. You want healing? Then bleed for your truth. Burn the role. Shatter the mask. Reclaim the man. Not the nice guy. Not the performer. Not the one who gets gold stars for behaving. The real man. The one buried beneath the applause. The one you've been dying to meet again. You were never meant to be liked. You were meant to be free. You've done the work. You've shattered the mask. You've stopped performing. Now comes the hard part. Staying sovereign in a world addicted to scripts. Because the moment you step out of the narrative, everyone wants to drag you back in. They'll bait you, project onto you, misunderstand you on purpose, weaponize your past, mock your transformation. Why? Because when you change, you make them uncomfortable with the fact that they haven't. You become a living indictment, a reminder that self-mastery is possible and that their comfort is a choice. So here's your weapon. Silence. Not passivity, not repression, but intentional stillness. Carl Jung taught that silence is not absence, it's presence. It's not hiding, it's observing. Not avoidance, but domination through stillness. It's the rejection of reactive energy. It's the refusal to be manipulated. It's the power of the man who does not flinch, does not chase, does not beg, because he knows who he is. Most men can't hold silence. They flinch under pressure. They explain, justify, plead, defend. But the sovereign man, he lets the silence do the killing. He doesn't correct rumors. He doesn't chase closure. He doesn't dance for clarity. You've done the work. You've shattered the mask. You've stopped performing. Now comes the hard part. Staying sovereign in a world addicted to scripts. Because the moment you step out of the narrative, everyone wants to drag you back in. They'll bait you, project onto you, misunderstand you on purpose, weaponize your past, mock your transformation. Why? Because when you change, you make them uncomfortable with the fact that they haven't. You become a living indictment, a reminder that self-mastery is possible and that their comfort is a choice. So here's your weapon. Silence. Not passivity, not repression, but intentional stillness. Carl Jung taught that silence is not absence, it's presence. It's not hiding, it's observing. Not avoidance, but domination through stillness. It's the rejection of reactive energy. It's the refusal to be manipulated. It's the power of the man who does not flinch, does not chase, does not beg, because he knows who he is. Most men can't hold silence. They flinch under pressure. They explain, justify, plead, defend. But the sovereign man, he lets the silence do the killing. He doesn't correct rumors. He doesn't chase closure. He doesn't dance for clarity. He's become untouchable, not because he has no wounds, but because those wounds are now his. Integrated, owned, weaponized. He no longer fears being misunderstood, because he no longer needs to be understood. This is the spiritual apex of individuation, where the man no longer seeks applause, where he no longer bends to comfort, where he no longer tailors his truth to make others feel safe. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Carl Jung, that's the throne. And it doesn't come with confetti. It comes with exile. It comes with nights of silence so loud it screams. It comes with people who once loved your performance, now hating your presence. Because presence, real presence, is unforgiving. It holds a mirror. It forces people to confront themselves. And not everyone's ready. So they'll try to pull you back into old roles, old dynamics, old wounds. And you do nothing. You don't react. You don't explain. You don't save them. Because the sovereign man doesn't sacrifice his truth to babysit someone else's ego. That's the weapon. Not rage, not charm, not brilliance, but sovereignty, silence, stillness. A man who can stand in his truth, completely misunderstood, and still not move. You want to be powerful? Hold the silence. You want to be free? Stop needing to be seen. You want to be unshakable? Own your truth in stillness. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them project. Because the man who no longer fears being misunderstood is the most dangerous man in the room. There is a man inside you that you've spent years trying to kill. Not because he was weak, but because he was wild. He didn't obey. He didn't flatter. He didn't negotiate his truth to win peace. He scared you because he didn't care if he was liked. He didn't care if he was understood. He didn't care if the world called him too much or not enough. He only cared about one thing, becoming what he was born to be. You buried that man. You buried him beneath politeness, beneath the shoulds and musts of domesticated masculinity, beneath the boyhood dream of being the good man, the agreeable one, the soft one, the apologetic one. You buried him in meetings, in relationships where you were never met, in dopamine loops and passive scrolling and performance-based identity. And now you wonder why you feel empty, why you can't feel anything except anxiety or numbness, why nothing excites you anymore, why your voice doesn't sound like your own, why your power feels like a myth. Carl Jung would say, it's because you've exiled your shadow. You made your wildness a villain. You made your hunger a threat. You made your soul's rebellion a disorder. And in doing so, you betrayed the only part of you that could save you. Because the part of you that you buried, that's the part of you that never lied. He was raw. He was primal. He was imperfect. But he was true. You buried him because the world told you to. Because the world said, that's not how a man behaves. Because the world punished you when you roared instead of whispered. But Jung warned us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you can't become that while playing dead. You can't become that while shrinking your truth to fit the comfort of others. You can't become that while waiting for permission to stop performing. That buried man, he's not your enemy. He's your invitation, not to become better, but to become whole, to reclaim the parts of yourself you've labeled as shameful, to integrate the rage, the hunger, the power, the truth, to walk as a man who no longer lives to be liked, but lives to be real. This is individuation. This is why you feel empty, because the man who could fill you, the man who is you, is still underground. He's waiting for you to stop apologizing, waiting for you to stop explaining, waiting for you to stop saying yes to what breaks you. He's not dead. He's just buried. And you don't need a map. You just need to stop running from the sound of your own footsteps. Dig. Find him. Not in books. Not in mentors. Not in likes and shares. Find him in the silence. In the discomfort. In the heat of confrontation. In the pain you've been running from. And when you do, don't ask him to behave. Let him lead. Because he is the man who cannot be controlled. And that is exactly why he must rise. You're not here to be good. You're here to be whole.